Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Bunker Show. We're here in our top secret bunker hidden beneath the sewers of Westminster, and we've got our Bunker Show crew here today. So here's the lady with the big smile who's looking after our chat room. Here's Helen.
Good evening all. Really looking forward to tonight's show. It's going to be a really good one. Don't forget to jump on Dark City Radio's website and join me in the chat room where you can interact with the show if you want to.
And also joining us in the bunker today is our Bunker Show regular. Here's Jimmy.
Oh, you really struggled with the what am I really? I'm here because I love being in the bunker.
And it's great to have you here. And this evening we've got a personal inspiration to me and somebody with a unique style of activism and entertaining the public. He's well known for using his megaphone in the big city of London and elsewhere around the country. He uses the power of humour and humanity to break down barriers and engage with the public on quite a unique, humorous and intelligent, loving way. You may know him as the spiritual entertainer, half of the Love Police, or even the social experimentalist, or just good old Danny Shine. So welcome to the Bunker Show, Danny. It's great to have you here.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
So without further ado, Danny, how did you get started doing what you do? And also, how would you describe what it is that you do?
I describe it in various ways, although to be honest with you, I prefer other people to describe it and have their own experience. You know, it could be described as performance art, I don't know, public nuisance, agitation. The other thing I see it as is a form of kind of Freudian psychotherapy, where I basically, I free associate in public, and I don't have to pay anyone to listen. I just get the crowd to listen and respond and be mirrors. So that's a little bit of some ideas of what I would describe it as. Just in response to your question about how it started, many years ago, maybe about 10 years ago, I went to Speaker's Corner and really fell in love with that experience. And then I met Charlie Veach in 2009, and he introduced me to the idea of a megaphone, and I fell in love with that experience. And we did quite some intense stuff together for a few weeks, and then I felt that it wasn't right for me to continue with him, so I have ventured off on my own ever since.
So what was it about megaphoning that really engaged you? Because it's quite a potent tool when used to engage the public and get the conversation going with the man on the street. So
yeah, I just found that I continue to find that it is an endless pool. There is an endless pool of opportunity for really exciting and interesting, as I see it, street theatre in a way. And the megaphone, if you know how to use it, is a very powerful tool at creating that. You know, it upsets some people. Oh, shit. Hi,
okay?
Sorry. Did you lose me there, yeah?
Just for a moment, Danny.
Yeah, sorry. So I was saying that the megaphone facilitates that kind of theatre, and, you know, it's really interesting, always really, really interesting to see people's reactions. Some of them are very hostile, some of them are very loving, and part of the whole thing that I find so interesting and attractive is that I am being pushed all the time to deal with these kind of things in the best way that I can, and sometimes I'm good at it, and sometimes I'm not. But it's always challenging and exciting and interesting.
And how much would you say, Danny, it would come down to you approaching a crowd with a preconceived idea of what you're going to do, or as opposed to how much do you actually read off of the crowd once you get there?
I don't go with a preconceived idea usually. Usually as I'm cycling along, something will come up or something will happen, or I'll pass a group of school children and then I'll go on about schools, or I might see a promotion. So yesterday, for example, there was promotion of Lipton's iced tea, which is basically just a sugary drink, and they were giving it out for free, and I was sort of standing by, oh, that's nice, you're giving children drugs. Oh, look, children, come and get your drugs. You know, and so that's driven by things that I see, or places that I pass. And then from there, it just, you know, whatever happens, happens. If I get too much hostility, I usually kind of go and relocate, which I do have to sometimes do.
And do you think it encourages I guess you to be more observant? One thing I noticed when I took out a megaphone is that actually people do give you quite a bit of non-verbal communication, or will enter into communication with you, and it gets you very, very used to noticing people's reactions and giving you a range of choice of how to engage with them.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, sometimes I'm very provocative, sometimes I'm do it with humour, and sometimes I get hooked into their anger and their fear.
And do you find that when you use humour that can be a tool to broach sometimes often difficult subjects? For example, when you're talking about drugs in fizzy drinks. That is quite an engaging way of bringing aspartame and some of the other chemicals that they put in those drinks to people's attention.
Yeah, it's a great fun way of doing it, and I try not to be judgmental because I myself struggle with these things as well. You know, I struggle with eating healthily and eating healthy amounts and various other things. So try to do it in a way that's funny. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. A lot of the people that go past are just, unfortunately, just oblivious. You know, they just walk past and put it down to some nutcase. And in a way, I kind of rely on that because I'm not sure I'd be, inverted commas, allowed to continue if too many people started taking me seriously.
I've noticed with a lot of your stuff, you know, watching a few of your clips, one of the approaches that you take is that you never take the high ground. You always come from a place of logic. Do you think that it's you just using logic gets you a long way?
I wouldn't say I just use logic. Sometimes I'm very illogical. I would say that I think one of the most important tools that I have when I remember to use it is meditation. Literally just counting to 30 or 60. That's one of the most powerful tools. Because what happens, a lot of what I do, I've only learned this through doing it. A lot of what I do is quite strongly related to the idea of questions. I mean, basically, the police and the authorities, they've been trained to ask questions. Because when you ask a question, you're drawing somebody into your life. You know, I'm drawing you into my life when I ask you a question and into my way of thinking. And if I answer it, then I'm basically allowing myself to be drawn into your world. Because the questions that people have come with all sorts of things added to them, usually assumptions, often accusations. And so unless I meditate and count for 30 or 60, I'll just get drawn into your world.
And
so,
do you find that's good for breaking some of those almost scripted routines, or some of those automatic ways in which people engage with each other? Because it seems that when you do use that ability to just stop and gather your thoughts and meditate and center yourself, often the people who are engaging with you also have time to become conscious of what it is that they're doing.
Absolutely. And actually what happens quite a lot of the time is they're not really asking me a question. They're making a statement, and they know that it's right. Sorry, I'm outside, it's a noise. And they know that they're right, and so when I close my eyes for 30 seconds to a minute, when I open afterwards, a lot of the time they're not there anymore. because what they're trying to actually do is to hook me in energetically. They're kind of projecting their fear and anger onto me as I fear. And if I'm not careful, I can get drawn into that.
It sounds like you've developed a strategy that works for you, where you take your time out, you meditate, and you take in what they've actually just tried to put on you before you respond, so you don't emotionally react. You sort of take a little bit of time out. Exactly.
And it's an amazing tool to use in life. It doesn't just have to be in that situation. It's just in general with the wife or the kids. It's very, very powerful, because we're very, very easily drawn in. I am, and I think our training has trained us to be very easily drawn in. Sorry, I'm just behind a bus here. To be easily drawn into somebody else's attempt to get us hooked into their energy.
Yes. And so taking that time out is the crucial point, isn't it? It's learning to act rather than react, which is whenever I realise I've reacted to a situation, I have to go back and think, that caught me there, and I didn't take the time to actually step away.
Right.
It sounds like that's what sort of thing you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
And you use humour a lot as well, don't you, Danny, to sort of take the tension out of situations. You're quite clever with your humour.
I'm lucky. I mean, I honestly... I have no idea where it really comes from. It just sort of pops into my head. I'm just very, very lucky that that's the sort of rather crazy mind that I have, and it's able to, in that situation, I feel very, very comfortable creating humour around sort of serious situations. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
I was going to say, when you have that positive polarity and that positive energy, and you enjoy what you do, is there any other reasons why you sort of take time out to have those kind of engagements, to really talk and find out about people who you engage with on the street?
Sorry, so I'm not sure I understand your question completely. Can you just repeat it?
I was going to say, sort of, why apart from the fact that you enjoy engaging with people, why do you take time out to Megaphone to do what you do? Do you think it has a social benefit or a community benefit? That gives it a validity beyond enjoyment?
Well, I like to kid myself. Well, I don't know about kidding myself. I like to think that, but liking to think it and it actually being true are two different things. I mean, I definitely have had lots of really great feedback from people who say that they've watched the films and it's helped them. I think it can help people because I think it helps people feel less isolated, because other people are expressing things that they've been thinking as well. Whether it really helps them in the long run, I don't know. I feel... Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, from my experience, from seeing you do some of that and being inspired by that, and having friends who'd help me get my hands on a megaphone and go out and start the conversation in the street with a positive polarity. From that, being able to then make short films where I'm vox popping people in the street. From there, that kind of helped galvanise more of a community where people would watch those, and that would stimulate conversation in the local community. And so,
right.
For me, I can see how that sequence has fallen into place for me, because when you do that and you have a positive life enriching experience, which I guess brings me to the free hug signs,
right.
and the power of a hug, because I know that you're a black belt free hugger, I guess, is how I'd look at that. And that's
I go for hugging police officers. Yeah, that's hardcore.
Yeah. Because I mean, that's apart from being an incredibly powerful image, and it also, breaking down that barrier between people in uniforms and actually making it more person to person. Right. As well as a hug being good for your endorphins and your state of mind. So, how is do you think using those kind of signs and those kind of theatre can be empowering? And I know you have people who've helped support you. So what kind of experiences do you think that they've got out of it?
Well, I mean, what your question has sort of brought me on to is something that I've not been so successful at over the past few years, and probably a big part of that is my own lack of organisation. But I really do think that I don't think people realise how enjoyable it can be to be part of it, and I'd like more people to do it. I'd like more people to do it, like you're saying, in communities, because in London, I am actually a member of a community, but it's not, it's more based on religion. And in London, it's quite hard to create communities, I think. I don't know, I'm not trying to, I suppose. But I think, if somebody gets a megaphone out and starts speaking in their little town centre, I think that can be really interesting, and they can create meet-up groups and all sorts of things and chat about things that are important to them.
Well, if you think about it, Danny, you think about the tradition of activism in entertainment and humour. Even with the greatest stand-ups like George Carlin and Bill Hicks, you had a case of, the fourth wall, either being the stage or the television. And what you do, I think, transcends that and reminds people that there is actually value in tactile connection. Yeah,
and also just trying to get people involved in whatever way they want to be involved. I really encourage people to heckle me. When I remember, even if someone's quite hostile, if I remember, which I didn't actually this afternoon, I will say to them that, I say, look, I really respect the fact that you're getting up and standing up for the people who you think, are being badly affected by my megaphoning. I might not agree with you, but I like the fact that you're saying something, because it would be worse if you just sat there and didn't say anything. I don't like the way you're saying it, and I don't agree with what you're saying, but I like the fact that you are saying it.
So I guess that's politeness and respect, which I think is, along with humour, I think is an element that is kind of very useful for engaging with the general public. Because I guess if you respect people and you're polite, my grandmother said, good manners will get you everywhere. So,
right. Well, I'm not always a believer in good manners, I must tell you, though. When I was, for example, in Birmingham on Friday, I was having a real go at some of the Christian preachers, and people were saying, well, you've got to have respect. I said, well, I don't know if I have to have respect for, ridiculous ideologies. I can have respect for a person, and I can have compassion, I can have compassion for the fact that we're all kind of so desperately searching for some kind of certainty that many of us feel the need to latch on to some belief system. At the same time, I think it's also valid as part of theatre in a way, but in general, to really have a good old go at any ideas, really.
So, in terms of making sure that there is that conversational engagement, because Jimmy mentioned that the fourth wall, in terms of the barrier between somebody who's broadcasting or performing theatre and the people who are engaging with it. And when that's broken down, that's a very, very powerful thing, because it then encourages or empowers people to get involved.
Definitely. And today I was actually in Camden, and for the first time since the corrupt Labour government, who I saw in their complete corruption do this live at their meeting, they brought in a law that made it necessary to get a license to use like a violin on the street. Any instrument you need a license for. So I've been stopped for the first time by Camden Council bods saying, asking me whether I had a license for it. So I dug right into them and said, "Oh, we really need a license to speak." And then I went round the crowd and I said, "You got a license to speak in the megaphone?" And one after another was speaking in the megaphone and saying, "No, I don't have a license." Or, "Yes, I do. Where are you from?" "France." "I've got a French license." And they were all participating, and they were all obviously breaking this so-called rule, which isn't even true. They haven't even read the legislation. Has great potential, like really including people and getting people involved.
It's interesting what you just said there. They haven't even read the legislation. I'm guessing you come across that an awful lot doing what you do. That people are enforcing laws that they know nothing about.
Yeah, and the police, of course, don't as well. It's not, the law is designed not to be knowable, right? It's not even knowable. So even if they know the actual wording of any act, which is extremely unlikely, they've usually got a vague knowledge of the Public Order Act, and maybe they know the Theft Act. Tiny part of it they know, but it's not comprehensible. So when one of the many techniques that I learnt actually from this guy on YouTube, the guy that has what's his name, the anti-terrorist on YouTube, about
great stuff.
Yeah, about asking questions. So I've asked loads of police officers, "Can you tell me what law it is that you're trying to enforce? What's the wording?" And they just have been trained to say, "We don't need to give you the wording," which to me is just ridiculous, really.
And yet, then they also have an argument that ignorance is no excuse if you break the law. So
it's
exactly. Uncomprehendable. But if you're ignorant to it, that's no excuse.
That's right. So there, yeah.
Yeah, and that can be quite an interesting double standard, of course, that when exposed often shows its ridiculousness. And I had the pleasure of catching you in London over a year or so ago, where you kind of gave us an interview for a little piece we did called "Is It a Crime to Be Annoying?" Right,
yes, I saw that.
And that discusses the stupid laws and the stupid regulations that we do have, and also a little bit about the amount of money which is wasted on enforcing bylaws.
Right.
And do you think that the things that you do, or the things that people do in their communities that draw attention to those things, especially if they're entertaining, if you have a piece of street theatre that people come and they enjoy themselves, then the chances are they'll come back, and hopefully that builds. But do you think that it can serve a purpose in shining a light on silly laws and silly enforcement?
Yeah, it does serve a purpose on that. Although, I often question myself and what I'm doing, and sometimes I think actually that all the videos on YouTube that feature policemen being less than skillful, shall we say, they're all in a way, in the background, subconsciously reinforcing a monstrous lie that if they were being skillful, they wouldn't be doing anything wrong. That somehow, if they were acting within their rights, whatever that means, or the rights that they have been given, which are not right, then somehow that would be okay. So, a lot of that stuff reinforces that idea, when actually a lot of the stuff that they do is not okay, even if they're allowed to do it. They have rights to do things that they don't have a real right to do.
Could you give us just an example of your own personal experience where the police have actually overstepped the line, or even security guards?
Well, I mean, I'm talking about something beyond that. In terms of overstepping the mark with the police, I must admit, to be fair, actually, over the years, 6 years of doing this, I must say that most of the time the police have been pretty good with me, and I think that I think it's important to keep on, counting our blessings. And I think that compared to other countries, I think we're very lucky here. And I think most of the police have dealt with me, considering what I'm doing is quite provocative, quite well. But occasionally you'll get one that oversteps the mark. And for example, a few weeks ago I was in Oxford Street. I was making fun of Office, the shoe store, and the policeman came along, and I kind of, as they approached, I was sort of making, oh, look, they've come now to doing a really big investigation, a bloke speaking outside making fun of the shoe store, And they went in, and they obviously were very nervous about it. And when they came out, and he asked me, why did you go in there? And I hadn't been into this place. Why did you go in there? Right? And anyway, within a second or two, he was arresting me, and it was just madness. But I managed to get myself de-arrested on that occasion within a couple of minutes, and sort of calm myself down and him down. So that's an example. But to be honest with you, as I say, I'm kind of more interested in uncovering all the powers that the police and the authorities have that are illegitimate. And one good example of that, and it's quite a big example, is all the laws that are around drug use. Because in my understanding, based on stuff I've read by Larkin Rose, he explains very, very clearly in his book, The Most Dangerous Superstition, how how there is no justification to give someone power that they didn't have beforehand. How can someone have the power to stop another consenting adult?
I've heard a good explanation of this being, Danny, if I can't do it to my neighbour and my neighbour can't do it to me, how can a group of people doing business as government do it to another person on our behalf? It doesn't make sense.
Exactly. It just makes no sense.
And you take it further. I mean, you look at the proposed legislation as far as legal highs are concerned, and the legislation is based less on actual physical harms and more on potential emotional responses. I mean, that just it's so dangerous. It reeks of dystopia. Yeah,
it's absolutely crazy, and the whole thing is crazy. And actually, I was stopped. A few months ago, I had a whole thing in Tesco, where I went into Tesco with a megaphone, and it escalated. The guy in the store was really angry by what I was doing, and it escalated. And to cut a long story short, the police were really badly behaved on this occasion, and they came and they arrested me, and they basically found on me literally a pinch of hemp, as I would call it. And basically I chose to go to Crown Court for this. They charged me with this, possession of this. I chose to go to Crown Court, and they then they were going to have a 1.5 day trial for this. It was going to cost the taxpayer £20,000.
That's outrageous.
And someone I know wrote to the CPS and got it in writing that the jury asked them how could it be that could be in the public interest to take that to court, and they wrote back and they said in writing that the jury has the power to find the defendants not guilty if they don't think it's the public interest to have them convicted, which is basically giving massive power to juries to overturn laws, because you can argue all sorts of things and especially the drug laws. Why is it in the public interest if somebody, for example, is supplying some mushrooms or some MDMA or some cannabis, especially if it's for medicinal purposes? why would it be in the public interest to have someone like that criminalised? And I've got it in writing that the jury can make that decision that person would not be guilty. Could be
I was going to say that's an important thing to get out to people who may be called to serve on a jury if they wish to do that.
What I would like to do is I'd like to have a publicity campaign, like a fun publicity campaign with people, perhaps even dressing up as as judges and lawyers. I don't think it would be against the law to stand outside a court dressed up, right, as a judge and a lawyer, giving out pieces of paper, just informing juries of their powers. This is a very general way, because it's not, surely they couldn't get you for interfering with the jury, because it's not there for any specific reason or specific case. It's just informing the jury of what the CPS have told us in writing. Yeah,
and that could have quite a potent effect, especially we've discussed on previous weeks on the Bunker Show that some of the fallibilities and non-functionality of the legal system, and I think that could go quite a long way for when people are put in front of a jury. If the jury is already aware that if they see a law as not in the public interest to be engaged with, that they actually have the power, because often judges don't inform juries of that.
No, and one wonders why, and one wonders if they're suffering from...
I don't think there's going to be many jurors that would feel it was in the public interest to spend that kind of money on finding a little bit of hemp,
Yes. Yeah, no, but I think there's something much more fundamental than that, because if enough juries understand, what you just explained before about your neighbours and having powers to do that, you have no power to stop your neighbour drinking alcohol, even if your neighbour's acting out badly. And alcohol is a terrible, terrible substance that leads to most unbelievable destruction in the world. But you still have no right. But you still have no right to interfere with your neighbour unless they're doing something that is criminal to you. So if you don't have a right to interfere, what does anybody have a right to interfere? How does the government have a right to interfere?
And also in terms, you mentioned alcohol there. Alcohol, you only have to go to A&E on a Friday or Saturday night to see the damage that alcohol can do.
Yeah.
When the hemp has been used not just industrially for paper, clothing, fibres, but also medicinally. As this show is followed by the Dark City Cannabis Compassion Club, and they're forever bringing out the medicinal benefits of marijuana, and also. Right. There's the economic side of the argument as well, that also puts marijuana in very close to the ridiculous laws, simply because California has a huge amount of its budget since it legalized marijuana. It's virtually keeping the state from bankruptcy.
Well, Colorado,
right?
Their school kids offer the tax proceeds from medicinal. So, the UK is looking increasingly backwards when you look at case studies, like Spain and Portugal, and it's just ridiculous, the laws as they stand.
Well, I think that by having a campaign informing juries of their powers could be quite interesting.
I think it would definitely send a message to the judiciary. I think it would definitely send a message to the judiciary if people were able to go outside. And it would also, in today's environment, it would be very interesting to see where the so-called authorities would draw the line in terms of when you're informing people on a general basis, or when they might decide that you may have to have an exclusion zone around the court or some such other aspects. Now, how do you find, in terms of where authorities or so-called authority figures draw the line, do you think that having a camera with you when you're exploring that has an effect on their behaviour?
Yeah, definitely has an effect on their behaviour, and I mean, yeah. For example, yesterday they called the police. I was outside Tesco, and the police came along, and they asked me, so what exactly are you talking about? And I said to them, I'm talking about feelings and about how somebody gets annoyed. I was kind of questioning who's responsible for that annoyance. Is it the person they think annoyed them, or is it themselves? And I put that to this lovely policewoman, and she kind of sort of blinked and had that sort of look of sort of computer doesn't compute, and then carried on saying, yes, but we've had a complaint about what you're doing, you know. Having the camera there, and I had the camera there, I was straight up with the camera, can help. It can actually cause problems as well. And again, that's why the meditation is so important, right? Because if you put a camera in someone's face, it quite often riles them up. And so there's something about that as well that needs taking care of with them. And that's why I always recommend for myself and anybody else to just count. The first thing to do is just say to them, listen, I was always taught to count to 30 in any situation that I find difficult, so I'm going to do that now.
Sounds like really good advice. While we're live, Danny, we've got a chat room as well, so we've got a couple of questions coming in. Are you all right to hear those? Mm-hmm. We've got one is, why do you use the name spiritual entertainer?
Why not?
Yeah, just something. Yeah, I guess they're asking what sort of meaning that has to you. I guess, or not?
Yeah. What meaning does it have to the questioner?
They might.
Why is someone asking me that question? Can't they work that out for themselves?
Okay, I think you've answered them, and they may come back. And the other one was whether or not you still believe that Russell Brand is sincere.
Do I believe that Russell Brand is sincere? God. The problem with that question, as with so many questions, is that it's drawing me into the world of the questioner, right? I don't even know what he means by sincere. And why ask me whether I think Russell Brand is sincere? Why don't whoever asked that question, what do you think? You know, why go out asking somebody else whether you think someone else is sincere?
So you're giving us a very live example of how you respond with questions, you know, which is great. Yeah, but I'm not doing it to be awkward. I'm genuinely questioning the question. Yeah. You asking them to wonder why they're asking.
I'm happy to just. I mean, where I'm at in terms of Russell Brand is that I found his stuff very, very entertaining, and I really enjoyed watching his films and the stuff he does. I found what he did towards the end of just before the elections very questionable. And I don't know why he did it, whether he's been threatened or compromised in some way. I don't know. And to be honest with you, I'm not even sure if it matters that much. But what matters is, what effect is he having on me? Is it a positive effect? Is it a negative effect? Do I want to continue? So for me, what's happened naturally is that I was trying to make a connection with him. I went to see him, and I did make a connection with him for about half an hour in his car about a year ago. And I've tried a few times to make a connection, and I got his email address, and I write him every so often. But I kind of feel now, I feel less inclined to pay him much attention because of what happened with the election, and I don't really watch his stuff much anymore. Even though I still think it's quite interesting and quite funny, I think that I have to be careful about where I'm putting my attention, how much attention I'm putting on it, and what effect that has on me. So if I'm going to give someone that much attention, personally at the moment, I'd prefer to give the attention to someone like Tom Campbell, who who, I don't know if you've come across him. Have you come across Tom Campbell?
Yes.
Yeah. So I prefer to give him my attention because I think that he's very sound. I don't have a lot of doubts about him. He seems very sound. He seems to walk the walk, and I'd rather spend time, on his stuff rather than Russell Brand. But that's my personal choice.
Yeah, and I've got another question here. How do you feel about the last November the 5th? How the last November the 5th march was policed compared to the previous year?
I don't know. I don't think I was at the. I'm not sure I was at the last one. I was the one previously where they were like firing fireworks at Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, we were there that night too.
That was quite funny.
Yes.
But no, I don't really know because I wasn't. I don't think I was there at the last one.
Okay, great. I think that's it for the minute on the chat room questions.
Okay. You mentioned that about the election time, and at that time you were doing everyone's party, and you also did a wonderful. I guess I wouldn't call it. Well, I think I would call it a party political broadcast on behalf of a candidate by the name of Ronnie Carroll, which I found very inspiring and engaging, because it seemed that Ronnie had again a positive attitude and wished to empower himself and his community. How did you come across that?
I don't know. I just bumped into that guy, Rainbow George. I bumped into him through a friend, and he called me, and we just made a film about it. So yeah, he's got some beautiful ideas.
So do you think that actually speaking out and getting your voice heard rather than relying on the sage advice of a Russell Brand, do you think that's a positive thing for people to do?
To what? To spread what I'm doing, you mean?
Yeah, to communicate about the stories that they have. The people that are in their community.
Yeah, sure. If people want me to get involved in some of their stuff, I'm happy to do so. Sorry, that's my kids in the background having a fight. So if people have a cause that they want me to turn up at, if people want me to,
Danny, it's all burnt.
If people want me to come and support their cause, they should let me know. I was at Sotheby's on a couple of days ago because they're paying their cleaners like £7.20 an hour and no sick pay, and that was quite good fun. So if anybody's got a cause they want me to go to, then please let me know.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting one to draw attention to. I mean, I heard relatively recently from a person I know about a crash in Brighton where the driver had been overworked. He tried to report in sick and was given an hour stand down time, and unfortunately had an accident which injured quite a number of people. And it seems that they, again, in that place, hopefully we can draw some attention to that Brighton and Hove buses really need to do better looking after their drivers. To bring in some kinds of regulation so that they don't work 13-hour shifts, but they work similar shifts to tachograph lorry drivers, because buses don't have tachographs. So, it is interesting to draw attention to some of those things that the mainstream often doesn't do and help get our voices out there. And I've mentioned a couple of clips in terms of It's a Crime to be Annoying and the vote for Ronnie Carroll. I know another favourite of a lot of people is Everything is Okay on the Happy Carriage and the other Happy Carriage clips that you've done. But what's your favourite clip? Or what are your favourite clips that you've done?
I don't really like those questions of favourites, but the ones, I suppose the interesting ones are one that I really should work on, take the guy's face out, but what the hell, it's up there, and he gave me a lot of stick for it. But PC Stout versus Cyclist, that's a good one. Have you seen that one?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I have seen that one.
Yeah, and then there's the Liberation of Canary Wharf. That's pretty cool. The Happy Carriage is quite popular. But lots of things. There's so many different things that we've done. Meditating in Barclays, someone told me today they enjoyed. I quite like that as well.
I thoroughly enjoyed that. I thought that was quite exceptional. And again, some of the reactions that you get from some of the security and some of the staff there really encourage them to consider what it is that they're doing.
Right.
Sometimes that their instinctive reactions aren't really the responses that they'd like to give when they have time to consider.
Right.
Which is an interesting form of communication, and being able to develop that ability to stop almost an automated dialogue and bring out a real conversation.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
It's like breaking the negative neuro NLP and feeding it with some positive NLP.
And I was just going to say, but as you mentioned, sometimes it's hard to know what's going to go on. I mean, I saw a clip with where a chap sneaked up behind you, and I think it was a cup of water.
Oh yeah.
Onto your head, and I just thought, if somebody had sneaked up to me and did that, it would be a bit of a shock. But also, it must also make you aware of that dynamic that can happen in public. Of nobody knows what's going to happen. So,
right.
Are there times where you found it challenging to do what you've done, or a little bit sort of surprising, or even scary?
Definitely. In fact, only today, I've been doing it today. Most of it was really great. But just before I got on the show, I cycled past Middlesex University, where they were having like parents and the graduates. They had all their Morse board things, and they were all dressed up. And I sort of got on my megaphone and I said, "Listen, you guys, you parents, I need to tell you what's really been going on. I live around here, and these students have probably spent the last 3 years just getting drunk and taking drugs, right?" And they were just absolutely livid, and they were threatening me, and I'm going to smash your face in. And and then one of the graduates came up. "We're actually midwives, and we've been working hard. We're not like those lazy students." And they're just taking it all seriously and really threatening and really negative. So that doesn't happen very often, but it does happen sometimes. And that's very uncomfortable and scary at times. But considering how often I do it, and in general, as I say, most of the time, just one or two people might get a bit upset, and most people sort of enjoy it.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes you can do that, as you said, from making statements, but often you do that from asking questions. When you engage people with questions in the street. And do you find that can be an interesting way to move the conversation forward?
By asking questions, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I try and do that. And often once I've meditated, what happens is I start to see all the assumptions, as we spoke about earlier, all the assumptions in their questions, and any spiking. If they've spiked their questions with anger or judgment or negative energy, then in that time I can sort of figure that out. And then when I open my eyes, I will ask them a question about what they've just asked me quite often. And
I've also, I mean, we once went up to Westminster Magistrates Court, I think, when we were making is it a crime to be annoying? Yeah. And you also use that method in in court to a certain degree. And how did you find that experience of when you were, asking quite simple questions to people in that kind of authority?
That I must say, the court system, they've got it. As far as I'm concerned, it's sewn up. My experience is that I can go in a crowd, and even a hostile crowd. I can handle a crowd of people, but going into that courtroom is so heavy. That the conditioning in there is so heavy that I fall apart when I'm there. I find it very, very difficult to stand in my own authority because they've really convinced themselves that what they're doing is okay and right and makes perfect sense. And anybody that questions them is obviously completely bonkers. And so it's really hard to stand for me, it was really hard to stand in my authority in that situation.
Yeah, and you also mentioned when talking about that in terms of things like the terrorist threat from Al Qaeda, the Rolodex, and ISIS. In relation to the sort of terror that people can feel when they get a red letter with the crown at the top.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's terror. That is terror. It is. I just think this system is a terrorist system. It really is. When you get those letters from the court, and my whole body shakes, because it's triggering. I think for me, and it's something I'm still really, really working on. I think for me, it triggers this kind of bullying that goes on in society, the bullying that we all experienced in school, and many of us, including myself, were both on the receiving and giving end in different situations. And I think we know that the whole system is extortion. The tax system is on extortion, which is basically violence based, and the whole court system is violence based. They are meting out violent punishment to thousands of people using incomprehensible words. And it's just, it's just wrong.
And also, as Jimmy mentioned, NLP and some of the other tricks that they use in terms of raising up the judges and the magistrates to a higher level so that they're looking down on you like a schoolmaster or a bully.
Or making you stand, or making me stand several times. I've never been convicted, but I've had to stand in front of a locked what do you call it, when they make you stand in that locked place, the dock.
It's a dock.
The locked dock. Yeah, I've stood in a locked dock, and I've asked the judge, excuse me, I don't want to stand in that dock. And they say, what do you think you don't want to stand in that dock? Just stand in the dock and do as you're told, you naughty little boy, That's basically what they said to me.
Yeah. And that's also the great power of using irony, using humour. It's to poke fun at that and break away some of the illusion of those men behind the curtains who think that they can apply their so-called authority over people without any just cause.
Yeah.
We're drawing to the end of the Bunker Show now, so thanks ever so much for joining us, Danny. Thank you ever so much, Helen, for minding the...
Yep, thanks, Danny, for answering those questions, especially when you answer them with more questions. That's great. It gets people thinking. And also, how do people get in contact with you if they do want your support with any projects they're doing?
Either Facebook, or they can email me at spiritualentertainer@gmail.com.
Excellent. Thank you, Danny.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay. And also, Jimmy, thank you ever so much for joining us in the bunker. I appreciate you being here this evening.
Yeah, it's been absolutely brilliant. And I just like the concept of street theatre challenging the establishment theatre. I think it's a really nice tool.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you ever so much, Danny. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us in the Bunker Show this evening, and keep spreading your positive message and inspiring people like me. You're no small part responsible for me getting up, standing up, and doing the Bunker Show. So thank you again.
Pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye, Danny. And that's almost it for the Bunker Show this evening, but it's definitely not almost it for what we've got on Dark City Radio this evening. Coming up after the Bunker Show is the Cannabis Compassion Club, and that's with Martin Edward, Sarah and Bob. And this evening they've got Michelle, Annex and Albert. And they do a lot of great work with UPA, which is United Patients Alliance. After that, we've got the Max Steel Show. But next week in the Bunker Show, if all being well, we should have David Henk from Xaro News. So we'll be looking into some of the real filth and cover-ups that have been going on here in Westminster. Thank you very much for joining.